Hey everyone, thanks for coming back to watch another video. I know I'm in the same thing that I was wearing in the last video because I'm filming them at the same time and I don't feel like changing, so I'm just gonna be honest, I'm filming this at the same time. I just kind of wanted to split them up for you guys so they didn't drag on, because I felt like doing it all in one would just make it for an extremely long video and I really don't want to have to do that. So I was at last time where my water had broke. So as I said before, I was at home and just sat down to kind of relax for the night and watch a movie, and my water broke. So that's when I kind of was very, I don't want to say panicked, but I was definitely very surprised. I was not anticipating that that was going to happen. There was really no indication that anything would be happening. I hadn't had any like contractions or anything like that. It just literally, my water broke. So I frantically called Hector. He kind of tried to reassure me that he would be there as quick as he could, but I knew he was farther away. I live in Mount Vernon and my mom lives, I would say she lives about 10-15 minutes away in Bow. And so I called her immediately, and she literally got to my house in 9 minutes from when I called her. So that was very relieving because I was worried since Hector wasn't near me, but my mom instantly got to my house. When she got there, I was kind of panicking, so I didn't really know what to do with myself. So she kind of calmed me down and helped me kind of pack things because, you know, that weekend was going to be my packing my bag time. I was going to get all that together. I had actually just thrown in laundry to pack my bag with. I was going to wash all my clothes and then start packing my bag. So that was awesome because some of the clothes were still wet in the dryer. So my mom was trying to find all the things that were dry and pack a bag for me. I was leaking because my water had broke and I really didn't know what to do. And then she kind of was the voice of reason that I needed to, you know, grab a pad so I wasn't leaking everywhere. Well, that was where my mind was at. I wasn't even making any sense because I was just kind of so much in shock. So finally, Hector gets there. We weren't even sure if we were going to be able to wait for him because I knew I needed to get to the hospital. But as I said before, my doctor had decided that I was going to start going to UW Medical Center. And so I really didn't know what to do in this situation because my thought was I was going to go into labor and contractions were going to start and I was just going to head straight there because you really don't have to head to the hospital until your contractions are like 5 minutes apart. So I just figured my contractions would start and we'd jump in the car right away and we'd get there in time. Now, obviously wasn't the case. Your water breaking is a whole different story. So we decided that we needed to call my doctor to ask him, you know, what exactly he wanted us to do, since I hadn't met my doctor from UW Medical Center yet. So I decided to give him a call. So when I called him, he was a little bit in shock too, because I really don't think he anticipated my water breaking either. So, but he decided that the best thing was for me to meet him at the local hospital, and that he was going to check me and make sure my water did in fact break, even though I knew it did. But he wanted to just make sure, and then we were going to come up with a plan from there. So Hector showed up, and he needed to still pack a bag. So my mom was like, I'll drive her to the hospital. You pack a bag and meet us there. So my mom drove me to the local hospital. They brought me into triage, and they checked me, and they did in fact find that my water had broke. And then my doctor showed up, he checked me, and I was only about a centimeter dilated, 1.5 centimeters dilated. So I really wasn't progressing as far as that goes, but, and I hadn't started having contractions yet. But my doctor was like, okay, this is where we need to make a plan. So he decided that they were going to send me in an ambulance because he really did not want me driving down there and potentially, you know, you never know how fast a woman is going to progress, and he didn't want me, you know, delivering in my car. So he decided to send me down in an ambulance. He felt that that was the safest thing to do. So he went ahead and called the paramedics and had the ambulance come pick me up. So when the ambulance got there, I found out that neither my mom or Hector could ride with me in the ambulance, so I had to ride down by myself, which was fine. And it's about, I would say we probably got there in about 45 minutes. So it wasn't too bad of a drive, but unfortunately in the ambulance, that's when my contractions started, and I was strapped down to a bed. So I couldn't, get up and get comfortable and work through my contractions the way I'd wanted to. We did take a birthing class, so I had some ideas in my head on how I wanted to get through my contractions, because I really would have liked to had a drug-free delivery if I could have. It's just really something I wanted to try for. But I think the way my whole delivery, or my whole labor started kind of set me up for failure when it comes to that, because I really, it just didn't really happen in a great environment. I wasn't able to stand up and labor the way I wanted to, unfortunately. But anyways, my contractions started in the ambulance. They were starting to become pretty strong. They were really close together. We finally got to the hospital, and they checked me there again to see if I had my water had broke, which obviously it had. And that's when my contractions started to get really strong. But they still only said that I was about 1.5 centimeters, maybe 2, but it was pretty much staying the same. And at this point, it was like 1 in the morning or 1:30 a.m., sometime like that. So anyways, I decided to get an epidural. I had gotten to the point where it was 1:30 a.m. I was exhausted. My contractions were super strong and extremely close together, but I was only 1.5 centimeters. So I decided to get an epidural. I knew I needed to sleep, and that was the only way that was going to happen. So I got an epidural. I was able to sleep kind of until about 6 or 7, but they were checking me periodically. And they decided to put me on Pitocin because I really wasn't progressing as quickly as they wanted me to. And when your water breaks, they have to deliver you within a certain amount of time to prevent infection, which I had already kind of started to develop a fever, and they were worried about that, so they were really trying to get labor moving along. So they were putting me on Pitocin, but unfortunately, Ayla's heart rate and her whole body was not obviously loving the Pitocin, and her heart rate was dropping when they put me on the Pitocin, and they weren't really happy about that. So they were pulling back on the Pitocin, but then obviously that wasn't helping because I wasn't progressing. So this went on forever, it felt like, where they were pulling back, then putting it back on, pulling back and putting the Pitocin back on. So finally, a doctor came in at about 3 p.m., and I had lots of doctors that day and lots of nurses coming in and out since I had been there for so long. So at about 3 p.m., a doctor came in, and she just said, "I'm going to check you right now. If you are not 10 centimeters dilated, then we're just going to take you in for a C-section, because you can't go on doing this much longer, especially because your water has broke. But if you are a 10, then that's great. We'll start pushing." But she basically said, "I really don't think you are going to be a 10. So I was pretty bummed, but I was keeping my fingers crossed. And she checked me, and I was a 10. So super thrilled that I was at a 10. So they were like, "It's time to push." So I started pushing, and that went on forever. For a while there, I just was pushing as hard as I possibly could. At that point, my epidural was kind of starting to wear off. I could definitely feel when I needed to push. I could feel those contractions. So I was really feeling like she was going to come with me pushing. I really thought she was going to be coming vaginally. So I think I went on for about an hour, and then they decided to put a mirror so I could kind of see, just to give me that little bit more of a reason to, push harder, because I could really see her. And I totally could. I could see her head. She was right there. But I just didn't think I could push any harder. I was giving everything I could. So I think that was for about 2 hours where I was just kind of pushing like that. And then I feel like 25 people were in my room at one time. Tons of doctors, tons of nurses, just like watching. And then one of the doctors decided that she wanted to try forceps. And the forceps are not something that I was super thrilled about, because I had we had talked about it in my birthing class, but I knew that if I wanted my hard work to pay off, that was my best chance, because the last thing I wanted was to be pushing for that long and to just have to end up having a C-section. So I knew that was my best option, was the forceps. So when they use the forceps, you still have to push. So at that point, she told me that to push as hard as I had ever pushed. So she used the forceps, and I pushed as hard as I had ever pushed yet, which was saying a lot because I had pushed very hard for the last 3 hours. So she said that she had budged a little bit, and so we could try one more time, and we tried again, and nothing happened. I heard them say to each other that they thought that she was sunny side up, so she was just stuck. There was kind of no way. She was facing up, so there was really no way she was coming. She was very stuck. So that was about 3.5 hours of pushing, and to me it felt like 3.5 hours of nothing, because you're pushing for that long, and then just to be told that we're gonna have to take you in for surgery anyways. So it was pretty hard. I was very upset. I kind of lost it at that point, and I was exhausted. I really hadn't had much sleep, and I had been pushing for 3.5 hours, so I was exhausted. I was also disappointed that I had to leave my mom, because I really wanted to be able to have my mom in the room when Ayla came. Just, one of the things you always think is your mom's going to be in the room when you have your first child. But Hector and I went back, and I was super happy that obviously at least he was able to be there with me. And the C-section is definitely not what I thought it was going to be. I was shaking a lot. Hector actually asked the doctor if I was okay because I was shaking so much, but I think it was just kind of the combination of the drugs that I had in my body, because obviously I had to be numbed. There's not much of a lot of the C-section is pretty blurry for me in my head. It was just a lot of stuff going on, and I think I had the drugs that I had, and the fact that I was so exhausted. There's just a lot of things I don't remember. But I do remember they poked me up until I could tell them that I could feel it, so they knew how far down of my body that I was numb. And then there's not really much. I mean, I remember how much it hurt. And I hate saying the word hurt, because they say it's not pain, it's pressure. So they say when you have a C-section, it's supposed to be pressure, not pain. And if it's painful, you're supposed to let them know. And I never felt like it was so intolerable, like pain, that I was going to like die. But it hurt. It was not comfortable. It was extremely uncomfortable. And you can kind of feel them like moving things around. It's not pleasant. So that's a big thing for me, is I would really love to have a VBAC. It's called a VBAC is a vaginal birth after cesarean, and I would really love for my next pregnancy and delivery to be a VBAC. So because it was so uncomfortable, and it's not what I wanted, and it's not what I had planned for myself. So it was uncomfortable, as I said, but I got through it. I do remember Hector telling me that Ayla was here, and then I kind of saw her, but they have like a sheet in front of you, and then I heard her start crying, so that kind of took my pain away for a minute, like, okay, she's okay. Them putting me back together was kind of the harder part. That part really was uncomfortable. You can feel them kind of putting you back together, and then them getting you stitched all up. And then they put this thing on you called a wound vac, and it kind of like sucks the wound. That's like the best way that my mind describes it, is it kind of just sucks the wound together again. And then they put a little thing over you that you have to keep on for like a day and a half. It's like a strip that like really holds it together. But they brought Ayla over to me. I was still very, like, a lot of this is very blurry, which is really hard for me to say, because I wish I could say that the birth of my daughter is just so vivid in my mind, but I was just so exhausted and kind of like drugged that I just didn't, I don't really have like the greatest memory of all of this, but we have pictures and of me meeting Ayla for the first time, and then I kind of like got to hold her a little bit, but I was still pretty like out of it. And then Hector got to walk her back into the room that we had been in, and they got me all put together, and then I got to go back in and see her, and then I kind of started getting back to my normal self. So what ended up happening was Ayla had been born jaundice, so we didn't know this right away, but she ended up being jaundice because I think because it had to do something with the forceps being used, and I think it has to do with the blood vessels in her. She was like very cone head because of how long I was pushing and them using the forceps, and she went through a lot during my the labor and delivery. So she unfortunately was jaundice, and she also was born with low blood sugar, so they had to start her on a bottle right away. And on top of that, they had to start putting her in the under the Billy lights. So they're these little lights that it looks like a tanning bed basically, and she gets tanned until her jaundice goes away, until her levels drop. So as far as breastfeeding goes, we kind of weren't in the best situation for being able to successfully breastfeed in the hospital. Because she had low blood sugar, she had to start on a bottle, and then because she was jaundiced, she spent a lot of time in the under the lights, and that was kind of like a big thing that they required for her because they really wanted to get her levels down. So we didn't really have a lot of time to play around with breastfeeding and trying to get her to latch, because it was kind of just feed her and put her back under the lights, put her back in her tanning bed. So we tried a couple times, but I think me being so large chested as well, and her being born premature, and just kind of all of that put together, it was really complicated for her to latch. It actually took like 2 nurses and a lactation specialist and my mom and me to get her to latch the one time that she latched. And everybody in the room, all the nurses and the lactation specialist, kind of were like super thrilled that we got her to latch that one time. But I just felt like it took like 5 or 6 people to do this. How am I going to do this at home? My husband has to go back to work because we spent 6 days in the hospital, so he had already taken all that time off. So it just never really worked out in our favor as far as breastfeeding goes, unfortunately, which made me really sad. And I kind of went through a little bit of the postpartum blues, and I think that had a really big part of it, was me not being able to breastfeed. I just kind of felt like I wasn't able to give that to my daughter, and it's something that I kind of always anticipated that I was going to do, was breastfeed. I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. There was no reason that I wouldn't be able to breastfeed her. So when I wasn't able to do that, that was a big part of the reason that I was kind of had that postpartum blues. And also, my husband had to go back to work as soon as we got back from the hospital. My mom had to go back to work, which was never what I anticipated, because I thought I was going to have Ayla well after my mom was out of school. So, because she works for the school district, so we had always planned that she was going to, kind of be home with me the first few days and help me out. It just didn't work out the way I thought it was going to, which it never does for anybody, really. I know that. It's just in my hormonal postpartum brain, nothing was working out in my favor, and I was sad. So it was just a little spout of the postpartum blues. It was nothing. I got over that, and I was extremely happy to be a new mom, and I was extremely happy that we finally were able to get out of the hospital. Ayla ended up being totally fine. All her levels dropped. She was no longer jaundice, and that was super exciting to me. She was healthy. I was really beating myself up about not being able to breastfeed. I just want to tell anybody out there that's watching this that is pregnant and for some reason knows they can't breastfeed, or has a new baby and breastfeeding's not working out for you. If you're watching this, that is not the case that you're not going to bond with your baby. It's absolutely not the case. Ayla is the biggest mama's girl on the planet, and she has been since 3 months old. Obviously, before then, newborns, you can't really tell. They don't know who they're with. They really don't. They have no clue. But 3 months, just almost 3 months on the dot hit, and Ayla just became this crazy mama's girl, almost over the top, Like, we would leave her to go somewhere, I would leave her to go somewhere, and she would just scream. She went with my mom when we went to a Mariners game one day, and she screamed for 5 hours straight. So, which wasn't necessarily a great thing at the time. So I hope that you don't have to deal with that. Anyone has to deal with that, because that is pretty frustrating when you can't even leave the room. But it is good to say that breastfeeding does not have to do with anything that has to do with your bonding with your baby. That's not what it's about. It's about your motherly instincts and being with your baby and spending that time with your baby. And if you're not able to breastfeed, you shouldn't beat yourself up over it. It's not anything that you can control, and your baby is not going to hate you for not being able to breastfeed. I hope that this kind of put things into perspective for everybody as far as my weight during my pregnancy and delivery, just kind of how my weight affected all of that. As I said before, I didn't have a lot of complications, but I think a big reason why I wasn't able to deliver Ayla vaginally was because of my weight, and just me not being in the best physical shape for labor and delivery. So that's a big thing that I want to change for my next pregnancy and labor and delivery. And that's a big reason why I'm making this video, because I just wanted to tell everybody that that's another big motivation for me. Everybody knows my motivations that I've said so far, you know, that I want to be healthy for Ayla and be healthy for just our whole family and just kind of change our lifestyle. But also we want to have, you know, at least one more kid. And I want my experience to be different. And for anybody that's out there right now that's, you know, thinking about getting pregnant, or, you know, someone that is maybe in the shape that I am in, or not at the weight they want to be, I would really encourage you to try to get to the weight you want to be at, and be as healthy as you want to be, so you can have a easy pregnancy and easy labor and delivery. And I'm not saying just because you're in really good shape and you're super healthy doesn't mean you're gonna have a breezy, easy labor and delivery and pregnancy. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying give yourself the best odds possible. Make sure that you are at the best health and best weight that you could possibly be for when you want to have a child, because it's going to benefit you and it's going to benefit your baby, and you're going to thank yourself for it. So I'm just hoping that people watch this and kind of relate with me, or if they're thinking about getting pregnant but they know that they're not where they need to be, that they can watch this and use this as a reference. Thanks everyone so much for watching. I can't thank you guys enough for tuning in and actually caring about what I'm saying. I'm going to try to be coming out with a new video soon for you guys. I know I made everybody wait a really long time for another video, but we just were so busy. So I'm finally going to get back in the groove of making videos. I just kind of got to decide when I'm going to start filming. And I'm also going to be starting to coach softball in the afternoons, volunteer coaching in the afternoons. And so that's going to take up a little more of my time, which is exciting because I'm always looking for things to do, because I'm usually just home all day with Ayla. So I'm super excited to kind of do something different and new and something that I love, but I'm still going to be filming videos as often as I possibly can. So thank you for watching. If there's anything that you guys want to see or you want me to make as far as videos go, just let me know in the comments. I say it every time. Text me, DM me, whatever. Just let me know what would interest you, and I will try to make that video eventually. And also, please like this video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet, and comment with any questions that I can answer for you guys. So I really appreciate it. Thanks so much, and stay tuned for my next video.